Well, I decided to write the book because of all of the work I've done for most of my professional career on the topic of suicide attempts by young Latinas. And it all started back in the 70s when I was just entering the field, and I was seeing a lot of action in emergency rooms and mental health clinics where these girls were coming after a suicide attempt. And I thought, well, is it just the places that I was working at? But when I started asking around, calling colleagues at other health centers or emergency rooms, they said, yeah, we're seeing the same phenomenon. But there was no information that we could really turn to figure out what was going on and why this was happening. And over the years, I just kept treating a lot of girls and families that came to the clinics that I was at. And that's really what triggered my interest. And it was the pain and suffering that the girls were going through and that their parents too were experiencing with their daughters that really prompted me to make a real commitment to the topic, and one of the most compelling and interesting topics I've ever encountered. We thought first that it was poverty and only Puerto Rican girls and the acculturation process. Then we learned that it was not just Puerto Rican girls, but Dominican and Mexican girls and Cuban girls and Nicaraguan girls in the U.S. So then we began to think, well, it's not just Puerto Ricans, it's this phenomenon, pan-ethnic phenomenon, that is happening around us. And we then also looked at family dynamics, and we learned more about the family dynamics that caused it. We learned more about the internal experience of the girls' suicide attempt. So there was never any one aha moment. However, the most interesting thing for me personally has been the responses I've gotten from adult women after, say, a talk on television or a talk on radio, where I get emails or phone calls saying from Hispanic women in their 30s, perhaps 40s, who write saying, I was one of those girls you were talking about, and I did it because of this. There was a lot of stress in my family, or my parents were old country, old school, and didn't let me do the things I wanted to do as a teenage girl, so I attempted. It certainly would be a resource for parents of any, with teenagers, teenage daughters of any kind, whether they've attempted suicide or not. And I think especially for Hispanic parents, I think they'd find this book very valuable, because what I've tried to do is explain their daughter's side of the picture, but I've also tried to explain to the daughters their parents' side of the picture and what they come with, so that they can understand why their parents hold on to certain values and beliefs and expectations of them in the home and with their siblings and as girls, that the girls may not understand. Things that their parents bring from their culture and their heritage, but the girls don't understand. It's also important for especially immigrant parents with American daughters to understand the differences in the way their daughters' teenage years occur versus the way their parents' teenage years were back in the home country. Vastly different. And when parents appreciate what the differences are, we find that they're less likely to attempt suicide. Take, for example, one of our key findings in this study is that the greater the level of emotional attunement between a daughter and her parents, what I call in the book mutuality, but we can call it reciprocity, is that with every 1 point increase in this reciprocity, we see about a 50% reduction in the likelihood of a suicide attempt. It tells us that parents and youth need to talk more to one another, and then that's one way that we can reduce the chance of a suicide attempt.